Hello, ladies and gentlemen. 皆さん、こんにちは。こんばんは。私はポッポーです。そして我々はポッポーですよね。Okay, so in this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look on how to recreate this, on how to create this. I'm not going to go into rendering because everybody has a different render, and rendering Xparticles is pretty simple. There are thousands of stars out there, and you can just replace your particle with a sphere and you're done. So I'm not going to spend time on that. I'm going to spend time on teaching you how to go about this. Let's get right into it. I think it is worth mentioning the origin of the real tutorial, which is this one by Steven Nipin, which is a very respected man who does tutorials for Houdini, and he made this 3 years ago and it looked really good. The result is nowhere near what you can do with Xparticles, so yeah, I mean, doing this in Houdini is way better, but yeah, this is a way of how to do it in Xparticles. Alright, now that we're in Cinema 4D, this is the hand model that I'm gonna go with. This is just a low poly version of the high-res version that I have here. You can see here, this is the high-res version that I have, and what I did was I just went and reduced the polygon so that I can have it not so heavy anymore. So this way, the amount of particles are going to be emitted is not going to be crazy high for nothing. Okay, so that being said, let's discuss how this is going to be done. Basically, the only thing you need for this tutorial to know is we need to constantly change where the particles are emitted. So a standard way of just dragging your object and rendering particles is not going to work. So what we need is we need to create a kind of a velocity kind of emission. What that means basically is just fancy word of saying that we're going to create black and white spots that are going to be moving all the time in a high speed. And then Xparticles will have to look for those whites to actually render them. So when you render them, you have that motion of like they're moving. Okay, so that is one. The second thing is we need to keep our particles around the hand. And for that, we're going to use a Flowfield. And then to get that very beautiful, smooth, flowing particle visuals, we're going to use a lot of turbulence. We're going to use a lot of motion modifier. So because we're going to modify the motion of these particles. All right, that being said, this is everything you need to know on how to create this effect. Let's get right into the step by step. Now, let's see how that works. So if I go and create a material, I'm going to apply it there. And let's just say that I'm just going to go here and put a noise, and we're just going to clip this so that we can have these here. All right, so we're going to have something like this. So if I go into Xparticles, create a system, and then in here, I change from, rectangle. I change it to object, and then I put my hand. Now, basically what's happening is my Xparticle is emitting hands in every single polygon center. What this whole fancy word means is that the center of each polygon, Xparticles you see here, is emitting from there. So every single center of the polygon. Cool. If I change this to, for example, polygon area, now instead of the center, it's going to be the whole area. So, yeah, you get that. Now, we can actually try something else, and that is texture. So if I go into texture and drag in my tag of the texture, check this out. See that? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go to emission, turn off the speed, and I just want you to see something. See that? Let's just add more so that you can see more what's going on. So now Xparticle is only emitting where white particles are, not the black ones. All right, cool. So what's gonna happen now if we add a little bit of animation? See that? Now, Xparticle is gonna actually, because this is the animation now. See that? Now Xparticle is gonna start animating whatever the E is, whatever the white is. So if I go and we just increase this by like 300%, just decrease this, yeah, something like that. Now Xparticle, you see that? Cool. Now if I give a little bit of motion, you see, so things are turning and stuff like that, which is pretty beautiful. All right, now how do we get this to actually just keep on rotating around my hand? Well, for that, I'm gonna use a Flowfield. So right off the bat, you can see that now we have this really beautiful motion, but let's make it even more. So what is a Flowfield? It's just as the English word flow field, you flow in a field. So right now, the only feed that exists is random. So you can see these lines, that's what represents the field. So if I turn it off, they're not gonna flow anywhere. So if I go and just for, you know, representation purposes, if I go into the field and then add a, let's just say a service tangent, and then I'll just say this. So now we're gonna have a very different style of the flow field. Now I can also turn this off and I can say that, oh no, you know what? I want turbulence. So now you have this turbulence going on. All right. And then I'm like, okay, no, I want it to actually flow on the spline. All right. So let's just do this. Now it's gonna try to look for the spline now. So as you can see here, let's try to look for the spline. So this is what a flow field is. You basically can control how your particles flow in a field. But now I don't want this, but actually what I want is I want it to flow on the hand. So I'm just gonna go and say surface tangent, because this is a surface. So I want it to flow on the surface. Right now there is no surface selected. Before we do that, let's make sure that we can actually make sure that the hand is inside this flow field. Okay, now I'm just gonna go and drag my hand here. See that? My particles is flowing perfectly with my hand. So that being said, let's try to go and try to take care of our particles first. I'm gonna turn off the flow field. So our particles is being generated, that's pretty good. Let me make sure I can actually just change this bit. I'm just gonna go to 250. I don't want this to be super big, just slightly big. Also what we could do is we could a little bit of a clip in both sides to also the high clip as well, something around that. So I think this is pretty good. Okay, so now let's try it again. Okay, that's perfect. Now what we can do is we can go to our emitter, and I normally what I like to do when it comes to the speed, for now I'm just gonna get it back to 150, and then we can control it with the speed modifier later, as we're gonna see it. I think it's way better that way than trying to do it individually. So that is one. We're just gonna keep it at discount, because if I go any more, Cinema 4D is gonna start being a little bit slow, if not way too slow. One thing for sure is I don't want the particles to stay alive all the time, because this is not beautiful. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna say around 30 frame for each, and we're gonna give them like a 5 frames difference. So now as you can see, they're gonna die after a while, and yeah, they're gonna be different on how they're actually gonna die. You see this, it's really beautiful when you do a picture instead of just a polygon surface area kind of emission. Radius, we're just gonna go back to 1, but we're not gonna really be able to see the radius unless we go here, and instead of just, you know, squares, we're gonna do circles. I just want to see them now. All right, so now we can see the radius of our particles, because we're gonna render these particles using spheres in Redshift or any other renderer. So it's really good that you see how your particles are actually gonna look like. One thing for sure is I want my particles to change the color as they go on their life. So I want to know when a particle is just born and when a particle is about to die. So that's why I'm going to go to gradient parameter. What that means is the particles are going to change the gradient color depending on a parameter. What kind of parameter that is, it's this one, age. So that's what it means. So when they're born, they're so blue. I mean, we can just kill that one there. All right, so they are blue. And then as they're about to die, they become white. All right, so I think we pretty much got it covered in how our particles are gonna go now. So what we can do is, let's just turn on the flow field. All right, that's pretty beautiful. Okay, so what I can do now is inside of this flow field, as we said, we're just going to delete this one. We have our surface tangent. We can add the strength of how they really respect this. So for example, if I go like 41% or something, you can see now they're really flowing on our hands. So they're really respected. And then you have a cell size. So a cell size is how correct and detailed this is calculated. The bigger it is, the sloppy the calculation is gonna be. But then on the preview and on the render, it's gonna be fast. But if you go down, this calculation is gonna be more crispy, like the look is gonna be more crispy, but it will be so slow. All right, so look at how this is flowing. See that? Now, if I go and say, for example, 10, now it's more details. But if I increase the particles again, for now, there is just a little slow at the end. You can barely notice it, okay? So if I go, for example, to 5, look what's gonna happen now. Now everything went loose. You see how slow it is? But then they're gonna really respect this, okay? So a good rule of thumb is just keep it around 10 or 20. And when you want to render, just increase it to 5 or 4, and then just go to sleep and do whatever you feel like you want to do while the render is going. I think we can just work with 10. I think my computer can handle it for now. When it comes to the field, I don't really want to change the direction. Again, this is just a copy from the Houdini tutorial, so they're just using this to get the velocity, and that's exactly what it actually is. So you can do it to change the velocity, and when it comes to the speed, how much you want to control, you can actually just go and kill this to 50. All right, so again, everything is just based off Houdini, that Houdini tutorial, because this is how Houdini works. Yeah, we got our surface tangent. I just think we need to add a little extra thing here. It's called fields. Basically what fields is just your normal thing. It's these things. All right, so for example, if you go and you create your plane effector and then you go to fall off, it's a linear field. So whatever this is, it's going to control the plane effector. And this is exactly the same thing here. So if I go here to fields, and then you can see that I can create a field. Okay, so if I create a field here, you can see that my field is now controlling everything about the particle. So all the particles are just going there. So I lost this. The reason I lost this is because the blending of the field is set to normal. Okay, and that's why it's not working. But if I go and put it just like an After Effects layer to an add, now you see that this is controlling the direction with the flow field. So if I go, you can see that I'm changing the flow of the particles as well. So now the particles are gonna go on surface tangent while looking up. So if I wanna, hold on, I'm just gonna go and increase this into 20. So if I wanna do something like that, so you can see that now it's becoming like some wind, really beautiful, turbulent effect flow. See that? So that's you can see that we have this really smooth looking particle flow going there. So this is what it comes to flow fields. I'm just gonna go back a bit because I think I rotated in the wrong way. So I'm just gonna go back here and I'm just gonna try something like that. Just make sure that I'm not changing the flow field. I'm not rotating the flow field. I'm actually rotating this guy right here. Okay, I think what I need to do is I just need to increase this a bit so that I can cover literally everything. So if I go here, yeah. All right, and one thing you should know is you can control the strength of this flow field, as you can see. So it's not really 100% affecting that. So it's all up to you on how much you want this to actually affect your flow. So it's all up to you. I mean, you can add even more here if you want, and you can have different kind of looks, so to say. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna get back here to 10. And just want to hide this, and for sure I don't want to display this anymore. Okay, I don't want to see this as well. Okay, now we got this. All right, now what? All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna play a little bit with the look of this particle. Remember, we talked about the particle speed, so let's just try to do that now. So a good rule for me is I don't like to change the particle speed from here. So what I like to do is go to modifier, and then here you have a lot of modifiers for your particles. But if you go to motion modifier and look for speed, so basically what happened is you're going to control the speed of your particles using this thing here. All right. So instead of incremental, meaning that whatever speed I'm giving here, it's going to give it to the particles as an increment. I wanted this to be an absolute. So now I can control all my emitter speed using only this. So I don't need to go to every single emitter. I don't need to go to every single emitter to control the speed. So now I can really control the speed flow using this. Okay, cool. So this is when it comes to particle speed. Now what we can do is we can try to add a little bit of a life value by using another control on the motion of our particles using a turbulence. And I like to use this because it gives me a lot of freedom and art direction when it comes to how detailed is the flow. Because just using this is not so detailed. This is just straight ahead flowing on the hand. But what I would like is to be able to control this just like how I would do a compositing stuff inside of After Effects, or detail inside of a Cinema 4D or After Effects. And I'm talking about the tertiary system, like large, medium, and small. That's just how things actually look good. So I'm just going to go and increase this to 5,000 just so that we can see now. Okay, so now we're starting to have this really beautiful motion going on. You could turn off this if you just want to see the flow field. Okay, so I think this is pretty beautiful. Or what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go here to the field. And I'm just going to say that the strength is only 5%. Okay. Cool, so that looks really good. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to turbulence. I'm gonna start playing with this. So I'm gonna say that the turbulence, this one is gonna be really big. So let's just say it's gonna be around 400. So as you can see here, that wind flow is way too big now. So it's pretty beautiful. And if we crank up the strength, you're going to see it even more. Okay. So then again, what I like to do is duplicate exactly this one. Or, yeah, let's just duplicate this one. And I'm going to call this is going to be medium-sized turbulence. All right. So the medium-sized turbulence, we're just going to cut this to something like this. All right, so now you have more of that turbulence going on. I'm gonna say around 40. All right, so now the turbulence is getting a little bit heavy, but I want this turbulence to happen quite a lot, so I'm just gonna say like twice the time that the big turbulence is happening. And I'm just gonna go a little bit low, something like that. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna duplicate this, and I'm just gonna call this small. This is just gonna be like 5%. All right, so yeah, and again, just as you feel like, if you don't want to do this and you're just happy with the flow field, then yeah, go ahead. If you want to just turn only the small ones, go ahead. If you want to only turn the small and medium, you know, go ahead. So you have quite a control. But the thing about this is because on the next part, because you're gonna render way too many particles at the end, so just having the flow field will look a little bit boring, but having all this turbulence exactly added, it's gonna make much more sense. But now that we're only seeing 5,000 or 50,000 only particles, we're talking, this is not doing justice to how it's going to be, because the real number of particles that we're talking is when you're going to have around 5 million, 10 millions. That's how much you need to render. Okay, and this is why I think that Xparticles is just not the way to do. I think it's just a waste of money, to be honest. Unless you're in a fast-paced environment, I think doing particles using Cinema 4D is just a kill. If you want to do these kind of simulations, you actually should be doing them in Houdini. They are so simple, and Houdini can take care of 11 million particles, 20 million particles pretty easily, and you have much more control there. So yeah. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to try to control the scale of our particles. So we want them to be born, and then we want them to scale as they die. And another thing is we're going to add another emitter so that we can have a little bit of a difference when it comes to particles, because now everything is just flowing exactly the same. I mean, it's the same emitter, and they're all flowing from exactly the same point of emission from this texture. So it would be good to actually add another emission so that we can add more depth into this effect. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so before we do that, let's do the scale first. So I'm just gonna go and go for look for scale. I think it's the control modifier scale. Okay, so I'm gonna put it after speed. So the scale now, let's look at this. So I'm just gonna go here into emission, and I'm gonna go back to 1 because I want to be able to see what's going on. All right, so now you can see that the scale of our particle increased, and that's because we haven't changed anything. We just kept it the way it is. So if I actually go and try to set this particle radius, I want to set it to this value, so now I can control the particle radius from this modifier. So if I put it to 0.5, now they're going to get smaller, which is way better. Okay, cool. And again, I want this to be mapped from big to small. You know, I want it to change as the age go. So what do I want to change? I want to change the radius value of my particles to change from age. Cool. But here it's increasing. So in the beginning I don't see them, and as they go in age, they increase. I want this to be the other way around. I'm just gonna add more. Okay. So now they're big, and as they die, they're going down in life. But then they die way faster, so they're gonna go super small. So you can see that they go like really small. Okay, so that basically takes care of the radius change. Now let's go and try to do the secondary particle. So let's just turn this off. I'm just gonna go and duplicate this one. I'm gonna apply it on this guy, I'm gonna go and try to change this from being like this. I want them to be really small because I want this to be really small particles so I can see them there. I just want to keep literally everything the same. I just want to have a little bit more of the black ones. All right, cool. So now it's going to be emitted from something like that. So I'm just going to go and create an emitter. I'm going to call this small, I'm going to call this extra particles. All right. And this, I'm going to call this main particles. So in this extra particles, I'm going to go and say that, yes, I want an object and I want this object, but then I don't want the emission from polygon center, but I want it from a texture, and the texture is this one. All right, so let's see what's going on now. There we go. Perfect. All right, I'm just gonna go again to display, and I'm just gonna show circle. Okay, so now this is how our particles look like. So you can see that it's much more prominent than the other one. They're being born in a lot because of how our texture is actually looking like. So in our emission again, I'm just gonna keep it rate. I'm gonna say like 2000, a little bit double what we have now. Obviously I don't want a lifespan, full lifespan. I mean, this doesn't make sense in particles. I'm just gonna say around 40. Okay, our speed is being already taken care of, and this is why I like having an XP speed instead of doing it here. Yeah, that sounds more about right. Another thing that I forgot to actually talk about is this offset origin. So you can offset a little bit the origin of how your particles are being emitted. So I'm just gonna, I mean, if I offset this by like 51%, you'll see that there is a little bit of an offset here. So I'm just gonna offset this by 3. So now if we look at this, all right, just gonna say 50,000. I just want to see that. So now you can see that the others are more plain of like those sparkly particles, as you can see. So now we have a lot of details in here. But the only thing that is a little bit disturbing about this is these sparkly particles are being affected by everything here, which is good. But this one is, I want it to only control the big particles. So I want to have another one that controls the small particles. So to do that, I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so we have that there. But I don't want it to be affected by this. So I'm just going to go to modifiers. I'm going to say do not. You see? Now they are affected by everything here. And when I'm going to drag this into the modifier, it means that do not calculate this. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this extra PRT. All right. And now in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go the object. I can set it to 2 because I want this to be sparkly particles that I can have them glow in compositing. So it's just going to be like 2. And when we go, set value, and then we go into the mapping, what we can do is we can have them, again, it's going to be sparkly, so it's just going to happen in a short time. All right, and it's gonna die like 30. So you see that, and then it just dies. Cool, and then we have to remember that this is now affected by this, and we don't want that. So now we have a coherent system of that effect happening. So now we can have normal texture for the normal main particles, and then we can have another extra texture for these particles. And by the way, for these ones, we can actually just change a little bit the color here. We're gonna go to gradient parameters again. What we could do actually, we can just change a bit the colors of this one. I'm just gonna select this. I'm gonna go to something like so, and then here I'm just gonna go to something just something around that. Cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. This is basically how I did that preview that I showed you. The only thing that is left now is you only have to go and actually just crank up the particle number when it comes to this or that. Another thing that is really worth mentioning here is that do not only limit yourself into using this for this kind of hand flowing particles. No, you can actually use this for FUI. You know, I can just render this just as it is, and I can composite it inside of After Effects. You know, I can just remove this as well. You know, and I can have this and have this info being used on an object inside of After Effects and say that these are datas of how human infection is going on and stuff like that. So again, that's why I don't want to focus this tutorial on how to render and light and all this stuff, because there are a couple hundreds and millions of tutorials out there about that. But what's important is how to get your idea covered, and this is how we create field flowing particles. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you so much for following this. Don't forget, if you like this content, to hit a subscribe, like. It helps me get more exposure in YouTube, and it reaches more people who wants to learn more of this, and it also helps me, you know, hopes up that hey, you should continue on making tutorials. But I like to do them, so I'll probably be doing that anyways. I would also like to thank all my Patreons. Thank you so much for helping me in staying in this mood of continuing of doing tutorials. Probably if it wasn't for Patreons, I would have probably not released the tutorial at all in the next 5 months or 6 months. Because I'm busy with way too many things, but because of Patreons, I feel like it's my duty to actually keep my word and keep on helping the community. So thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. My name is Mr. Popo, and we are Popo.